Boom.
Welcome back, Neil. Thursday night show.
Very special show.
Kind of rare. Got to think about it.
Yeah. You weren't happy about it.
Well, my grandkids are in town.
That's right.
So,
Yeah, they come first.
And they love me.
As soon as
I pick them up.
As soon as you told me that, I went, oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for something.
Today, my grandson was there, and his dad Sam came home from being gone for a few days.
Yeah.
And he rolls up and he puts and the kid looks up at me and goes
And speaking
he
of
felt bad.
Speaking of grandpa, a great uncle here.
Yes, I became a great uncle.
Congratulations. Senator John Laird is back on the Off Lip Radio Show. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you.
You've been busy. You're always busy.
Yeah.
I know that. But we're going to catch up.
Well, when I called him, he goes, "Yeah, I want to come on the show right away. I want to do it right away." But I called Bill, your assistant, right? And he says he wants to come on right away and start talking about it because, there's been rumors flying and bits and pieces going around, and John's here. Going to hear.
And welcome back, John. And the rumor thing's cool because I feel like I'm a sort of victim of it. I'm a victim of people on social media being experts. I'm a victim of people having conspiracy theories of what's going on, particularly with the Moss Landing storage facility. And maybe just really quick, you can get us up to date of what's going on. Because I saw in the news 2 nights ago, they're like, it could flare up any minute. And I was like, what the heck? It's like we're back into another fire?
Did you know there was battery storage there? Did you know?
Did I beforehand? Yes,
Yeah.
I knew.
Oh, you did?
Because I pay attention to what's going on in Moss Landing because I've spent a lot of time in the wrecking yards behind it.
Yeah.
And I've always thought it's been interesting. They used to subsidize some of the slip renters in Moss Landing for the soot coming out of the towers, and I've always been intrigued about the things at Moss Landing.
That was PG&E, wasn't it?
At the time. I think, or maybe
I think it was PG&E.
Yeah, it became. Yeah, Duke. There you go. But anyways, going back to it, I drove by Pleasure Point one night, and there was a glow from Moss Landing.
Yeah.
And my wife and I were like, wow, what is going on down there? And it struck me, there's lithium battery storage there. And, of course, we all know the results of what happened. I know you have been inundated by your constituents asking you to act. And my point I want to get to is, from the time of the fire, I know this has been a huge topic of what you do, and if you can just fill us in, and we'll catch up after this, of what's going on and where you're at today.
Perfect. I'm going to do that. But let me just back up slightly because just what you were saying, half the world or 2/3 of the world didn't even know there was battery storage there and didn't even know what battery storage was or how it fit. So let me just do that for a second because I also want to say I watched the Off the Lip show with Toby and Justin and the third person whose name I'm spacing.
Maddie.
Mm-hmm. And they got to this great ending point after they went through everything you just asked about. In the end, they were like, we know we need battery storage, but it has to be safe unless it's safe. And it's like, and we still don't know what the emissions are from the fire, but in the end, they sort of came together. And so the thing I was going to say is this is new. Relatively, and
when you say new, the technology is new.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's our goal to get off of fossil fuels in California, and the leading ways to do it are wind and solar. Well, the wind doesn't blow sometimes, and the sun doesn't shine at night, so it's not like burning gas, which you can just burn 24 hours and always have power. And so the thing that makes it work is battery storage. So that what happens is that when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing, you provide power and you store all this power. And then at night, when it's not, you rely on the battery storage and it comes out. And so wind and solar don't work unless you have battery storage. And if I have the year right, in 2018, there was only 500 megawatts of battery storage in California. Now there's, I think, 33,000.
Wow.
There's 13,000. There's supposed to be 52,000 by 2045 when we're supposed to be off of fossil fuels. And right now, we don't have enough battery storage. So on certain days, we send power to Arizona because we don't have enough storage in California to save it. Now, when Moss Landing was built, it was one of the very first ones. And one of the things that we were talking about off camera beforehand that isn't understood, it's 100% approved locally. It was the Monterey County Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. The state wasn't involved. That was a complete local control thing with no...
So, to interject in that, all the complainers from that part of the world elected these people, pretty much, right? Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Is that, yeah, they...
Yes.
So as mad as they are of the damage that's been done, it's a result of the political environment that they embraced. Or for the majority.
But there's this other part of it, which is battery storage technology has moved way past where it was at the time Moss Landing was built, and it was only open 5 or 7 years ago.
So is the Moss Landing plant the Pinto of storage, the Pinto car of storage plants? Like
It might be the Edsel.
The Edsel?
And the thing about it is that it was built indoors. And that is just inherently unsafe, and which was just proven. And the batteries were stacked on top of each other, and the lithium mix was with heavy metals, because what we'll talk about, and what was talked about on your other show, is all the offlift of heavy metals from the fire. So now it is done around the state in containers, like shipped containers, that are vented. They're on cement slabs, they're outdoors, there have not been major events. And the lithium mix changed. No longer heavy metals, it's this thing called lithium iron phosphate. But it holds less charge, so it's not as efficient as the first, but it's much less volatile.
You've learned a lot about this.
Oh, the hard way. And so 75% of California's battery storage now, and what's proposed for South County here, and what just happened in Napomo and San Luis Obispo, what's proposed for Morro Bay that the voters don't want there, it is all the outside containers on cement slabs. And the thing that also, but Moss Landing was the older one, and we should never permit anything inside a building. We should never permit anything that's not in a container. We really shouldn't permit anything that's not the new mix. So there's that. And now 75% of California's battery storage is the new lithium and the outdoor safer thing. But the 25% is the problem now. And it's a whole mix of things. Some of it is outside or containers, but it's the older mix of lithium. A few of them are inside buildings, which is just on the face of it not a good thing. And the thing that people are, we'll get to the fire.
With the buildings in particular, for people who don't know, and myself, that I'm not super knowledgeable on the subject, what inside storage is the worst part about that? Is it
that it's inside?
That
it's just literally inside, because if one goes off, you've got all the other batteries right there, and they have this euphemism that they call thermal runaway, and that's what happened in Moss Landing. And yet, if you have it in they've done tests that show that these things have gone off in the containers. They've actually in tests set fires to see, and it's been very close, and it is not transferred to the next container. No, I don't want to represent that even the fire from a small container is not good.
Right.
It is not good, but it is really small compared to what happened.
A major disaster is preventable at that level.
Yes.
Easier.
Yes, and you see, and the thing that is one of the big debates is how do you put out a fire? Because the technology now is not that you put it out, it's that you prevent it. And so when you were saying, oh my God, it could flare up, people were saying, what happened is that those batteries that burnt or are still there, partially burnt, are outside now. And if rain hits them, and they still have a charge, it flares up. The flare-up that happened, whenever that was, a week or two, that's what happened.
They got wet.
Yeah, and so, and you see, the worst thing is to introduce water into the situation. And of course, originally they thought, oh, we have a roof over it. Wrong.
Because they had sprinklers inside the building, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and you see the incident that happened in 2022 that precipitated a lot of concern at the time. There wasn't really a fire, but the suppression system went off.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was supposedly vapor cloud. Highway 1 was closed. People were sheltering in place, and that's why I did the bill, the Senate Bill 38, that said you have to have safety plans, evacuation plans that involves the local community and fire department, and submit them. If you're in a city, submit them to the city. If you're in a county, I mean, this is before the fire.
Right.
I did this, and now we're finding out that they didn't fully comply. Vistra's the owner of the. Vistra had one.
Are they from Texas? Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah, they're a
the
Texas
company?
They only have, this is their only California installation, and they've proposed a second one for Morro Bay. And so they had a plan, but they released it before the law went into effect and thought they were good. PG&E had this modified plan, partial one, for the other property there that didn't burn. And they just sort of sent it to the fire department, not the county, and it wasn't exactly what the law. So now they're both in the process of complying with that law. But then today, as we film this,
Hey, breaking news.
yeah, the Public Utilities Commission approved a new order for inspection of safety on battery storage plants, and part of it is they will be the ones that enforce Senate Bill 38. So now, every year when they do audits and checks and inspections, they will check whether or not
John, when is it,
they have complied with it.
when is the EPA testing the air down there? Do you know if the EPA has tested the air
Yes.
and the water?
Yes, they have.
They have?
Well, let's talk about that for
Okay.
a second, because I think that's one of the obvious big concerns. And I have Zoomed with the EPA and Zoomed with the different departments, and they are releasing this to the county. If they have any test results, they release it to the county. And they released that first one that the county released, I've lost track, 3 or 4 years ago, weeks ago, seems like years. And they had no context. The county was just throwing these numbers out, and I got frantic calls. And so as the county was announcing it, I got the director of the Department of Toxic Substance Control that had done or been involved in these tests to call the county and start the process of, these are what all the readings mean, and these are whether they exceed public health efforts. And so I have Zoomed with them, and because I want to know, for moments like this, to be able to tell people. They have done water quality, and they say it tests in the area and drinking water, and they say does not exceed levels of the heavy metals that are dangerous. They've done the air. They've done the same thing. They've done what they refer to euphemistically as biota, and it's animals and plants and things. Nothing there. They've done agriculture. It is below the level. I'm leaving one out.
Department
They've done
Upland
human
Zoo?
health stuff. You know, where people have reported it, and so I was like, well, why don't people know about this? Well, we are sending it to the county, and so it's a question of when the county releases some of this, and the county just put up their website in the last day or two, and it should have all this on it so that people can go to it.
to see the numbers.
Yeah, and we also, the first study was out by the Cal State University professor that was at Moss Landing. And we have talked to him, and we actually have worked to get him money from foundations to be able to continue his work. And the big concern is are people doing these tests in the right place? Because what I hear from the complaints from people there, well, no, it was done here and here. No, it was done outside the plume.
Right.
And EPA insists to me, and they just did it again this week, that they have I think they call it plume modeling, and it is sort of this stretch that they best believe was below the most intense plume, and they are testing every place that is under the plume. And I think when they weren't releasing this immediately, and it was only Vistra, nobody trusts Vistra. after this.
Absolutely right.
It's like, well, I don't think that's true. And of course, we're from Santa Cruz and the wind wasn't blowing this way, but people were convinced it was happening to them here. And it really, the wind blew northeast. And so the plume sort of went out of Moss Landing
Prunedale.
toward Prunedale and toward.
Is that where people got
Lawrence.
sick? Is that people got from this fire, correct?
Some,
Headaches and different
yes,
things were
in the first period of time.
Okay.
Yes.
And those people, what can they do to? What can they do?
They should go to the public health department
Yeah.
and file whatever the results was if they were tested or get tested
Okay.
there. And that information is supposed to be, I have not looked at the Monterey County webpage, but it's supposed to be there.
Okay.
So it tells
Are
where to
people,
go
are
and
people
how to
still
do it.
being affected by the toxic fumes? You know.
The scientists say no, but you have to ask the people.
Okay.
You know, the scientists don't believe that's going on, but you really have to ask the people.
Is there any, I mean, it seems like for the most part, they're trying to get information to the public. Is there anything that's being withheld, in your opinion, that's not going to the public? Is there any information that they should have that they're not getting?
No, in general, is the answer. But, how do I say this? I think there's been times when getting the information out that people have has been clunky. You know, and conversely, when the county released those first numbers, they were so worried about everybody having the numbers that they released them without, this is the
Telling
danger
them.
level.
Right, yeah.
Did you and I read the same thing? Was maybe they're looking at 3, battery storage,
Yeah, there's
In Santa Cruz County?
There's other ones that.
or is it just one?
I think there. I know there's one, but somebody today said they thought there was 3.
But I know there's one clearly that's outside of Watsonville, and it's the new configuration. And you
Yeah.
see in the other dividing line that we didn't quite talk about, because if you talk about this regulatorily, if it's under 200 megawatts of power, it's local control.
Right.
If it's over 200, there's local stuff, but you can opt in to choose to have the State Energy Commission approve it and regulate it. That's what's causing some upset, because if it's over 200, it's a bigger one.
Right.
And the thing
But
is,
there's another set of eyes on it, though. The state,
oh,
the state's
absolutely.
involved with that. one,
Yes,
on the
well, you
bigger
see
one.
it, but that's the point, because when the locals did it, I mean, the residents were complaining about the testing, and they said, well, the county has no toxicologist. How do you know what it is? And so here you got a county that has no toxicologist and no level of skill, and yet that's where people want 100% of the approval. And so I am working on a bill that I will amend the guts into hopefully next week, that takes the lithium standards of safety that exist out there and amends them into law so that if it is local, they have a guidepost of what has to be done. And I'm hoping to require fire inspections and consultations with the fire department before you do it. I'm hoping to be able to say you'll no longer permit one that's inside a combustible building. And the thing about it is everybody's lost in federal and state, but neither one has any steam turbines right now. And the interesting thing is that the Energy Commission does require, they've permitted I think 7, and they do require monitoring. And that was the tough thing here, because it was just as Neil was alluding to, when the plume came out, there's no monitoring right away.
Well, every time it rains now, every time it rains here the last couple of days, the thing just flares up again and more toxins are let loose. Was that correct?
Well, we were talking about that in the fact that it flares up lightly wherever there's still a charge in the batteries
Right.
and they're exposed to the rain.
Right. Is there any kind of emergency ordinance to some regulatory commission established to no longer pose health and environmental risks?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the
Is
question.
there is there a regulatory commission that's looking down at this and is there an emergency
there's
ordinance?
regulatory agencies that come in and
Okay.
do it. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and there's all these state agencies that nobody's ever heard of before. The Department of Toxic Substance Control, and there's a special office that's called the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, or WEHA is the acronym, and they really test and do the science on the individual stuff. And they've all been in, along with the federal EPA. When I have been Zooming to make them tell me what they're doing, they have had 2 people from the federal EPA in San Francisco on the Zoom.
Wow.
You know?
Are you the first state senator to have this problem?
This way.
Yeah, and are you becoming...
There's been another fire in San Diego, but it wasn't anywhere near.
Because I feel like this is going to be, this is reality. This lithium, I mean, it was funny when the fire in LA hit. I watched, there's a guy on YouTube and he rides his bike around Palisades. And everywhere there's a Tesla, the whole middle of the car is melted. You could tell. You would never...
Well, you see, that's the interesting thing. One of the reasons in putting the safety standards into law, it's about certain battery storage plants, but it's really about all the car batteries. And it was really true in the Palisades because there was a lot of, and so the waste disposal is this totally different thing. You know, it's not like you just go in and clear it out. If there's a lithium thing there, you have to deal with this. And I talked to the professional firefighters the week after the fire because I wanted to get their first they said, smart thing in not bringing firefighters in.
Yeah.
You know, that's what the head of the state organization said to me. But the thing is they were more concerned. They're going to be the co-sponsors of my bill, the professional firefighters, and they are really worried about car places in residential neighborhoods, anything that does battery storage around people that's car batteries, which I gotta confess had not occurred to me.
Well, it takes a situation like this to really bring this to the limelight. I mean, like you said, most people didn't even know this existed in Moss Landing.
Much less that it's a part of, that it exists all over the place and it's part of the state strategy.
It's like, TC, I don't understand it with the Coastal Commission that we have in place, how they let that place be built in the first place.
Well, you see, the interesting thing is that
Zoning?
well, it depends on whether it's in the coastal zone, and it might be. I don't know how they did it, but the Morro Bay one that's controversial, the Coastal Commission wrote a letter last August or something saying we have deep concerns about the Morro Bay battery storage plant and where it's located. And so I talked to the company before the fire, in the weeks before the fire, and said, you have to take the Coastal Commission seriously because they're from Texas. They did not, I think, fully understand what the Coastal Commission was. And I said, I read this letter as them saying they're not going to permit your battery storage plant. So you have to take them seriously. And if there's a way to address their issues, you need to address them.
And the Morro Bay plant, it is right on the beach.
Yeah, but it's the same thing.
It's a power plant.
It's around the old smokestacks in Morro Bay.
Yeah, right on the sand. And similar.
Well, I walked to that before. I think.
That's
I
your
don't
backyard.
know if we knew. I don't know if we knew the battery storage was proposed. I walked it, and they have this big. These berms that are 20 feet tall that sort of enclose the whole thing. And you see. There have been a lot of controversial issues down there. They're not fans of offshore wind because they're worried about what will happen to the estuary there. And a lot of us are like, I think we're going to have to do offshore wind, but we shouldn't mess with their estuary. But they also had water recycling plant there. And that was really contentious in 4 elections. And they finally approved it, and it's about a mile inland. And it came online 3 weeks before the atmospheric rivers. And the old one is down there by the water. And if that had still been in place at the time of the atmospheric rivers, the odds are we would have had a catastrophic failure. And the sewage would have been in. So they are ground zero for lots of things: water recycling, offshore wind, battery storage.
It's not a state problem, but it's a local problem, but it's a big problem. And does Gavin Newsom like call you every day? Go, hey John, what's going on? Every day.
Actually,
Should
we've
he not
been
be calling
talking
you every
to
day?
his office all the way through this.
What's that?
We've been talking to his office all the way through this because, and the problem.
And what's his office say? What do they say?
Well, the problem is this was the week after the LA fires, and so they were just like. all on that. They are on this, and they are sort of directing the state departments to respond. They're dealing with the Energy Commission. I think they never signal their position on bills before it gets to them, but I think they would like standards, so whether it's local or state, nobody's left alone. You have to meet lithium safety. You can't do it indoors. You have to have fire inspections. They are thinking, okay, it makes sense to do that
Right.
everywhere.
So this bill you're trying to pass, is it going to pass unanimously? It feels like,
Oh, I have no idea. It's still early.
but it seems like it's such
we
a problem.
We can't be unanimous on the flag salute.
Well, there'll be one or two.
I think that it will be received well because I'm actually, you see, this is the thing that I think was the problem I had when I met with some people with Moss Landing recently. You haven't posted in a month. You are not doing anything every day. I mean, I'm Zooming with Tesla. I'm talking to the governor's office. I'm talking to the Energy Commission. I'm talking to the PUC. I'm talking to the firefighters. The other co-sponsor of the bill will be the electrical workers because they represent all the workers in all these, and they want their workers to be safe. You know, but they also, in full disclosure, they want the jobs.
well,
But
and if it's dangerous, don't they get paid more?
Well, depends. If they're negotiating correctly, yes. And so I have been trying to work with all the, and local government, because local government has strongly held opinions. And amazingly, the chambers of commerce, I've been talking to the chambers of commerce. So, you know, I am trying to get a sense where everybody is, and I'm trying to be clear about how this fits into the state, because we can't have get off fossil fuels unless we have a strategy like this.
Right.
But we can't have a strategy like this unless it's safe for the people that live around.
Got it.
John, if you went out and bought a car tomorrow, would it be gasoline or would it be a battery operated
It
car?
definitely. Well, I have a hybrid. I have a battery.
What are we going to do with all these batteries? Are we going to be able to?
Well, I
is
think
this,
that might be a bill next year, because it's an issue. Right now, we depend on certain. You know, there's these landfills have different classifications, and there's a few of them that are class something that is the more intense toxic stuff, and it's the only place that takes them. Well, if you even, one of the things that surprised me in one hearing a couple of years ago is that solar only goes 25 years or something, and so we're going to have this time when all these solar panels need to be recycled or somewhere.
they're going to be recycled and replaced.
Yeah, and so the question is how are we going to, in our headlong rush to get off of gas, we've been doing this stuff, well, it's going to present issues as we go through. And it is the right thing to do, because you look at the Los Angeles fires, and it's like, I just don't want to forget why we're doing all this. I think on a past show I talked about, well, we were talking about Santa Rosa off the camera. There was a fire in 1964 that went from Calistoga to Santa Rosa, and I think it took 2.5 days. And then there was the fire in 2017, and it took 6 hours and burned a residential neighborhood.
Santa Rosa.
And the whole climate, humidity, everything is changing. And the scientists say, I had an argument about this at the political campaign last year. Of course, climate change isn't the cause of fires, and of course it isn't the cause of hurricanes, but it increases the intensity of both. I mean, the hurricanes going over warmer water in the Gulf mean that they're going to hit stronger, and the fires, but 100-mile-an-hour winds, that was the thing about the Palisades Eaton fires, you know.
Now, a question on the current federal vibe. Because if we are destined to be married with battery storage, what's their current take? I mean, you have Elon, the biggest lithium consumer on the planet right now.
The irony is
I
can't get my head around this right now because
let me ask what you just said, right? We have all these politicians come on it, right? Since we've
Right.
been doing the show, which is 12 years. It's yesterday.
Yes.
We've had the show for 12 years. All the politicians come on and talked about climate control. this is more important than that. The battery storage, do you think is now, top the charts as far as what we need to take care of first?
Well, right now in California, after Moss Landing, yes.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is it's like the end of your show with the three of them. They said, we need this.
We got to figure it out.
Yeah, so we have to figure it out. And I think that's the challenge. And if you live around Moss Landing, I'm not sure you believe anything is
Were they the guinea pigs of this type of storage?
I don't know if I want to agree with that term, but
Well,
let's say they were a test case.
Yeah.
Well, no, they were one of the first ones. And the thing is if you were ever in there, and I was in there, they took the old fossil fuel plant and they just stuffed the batteries wherever they fit in what was a configuration. They used to have the place that the trains brought in the oil to download and burn, and the batteries were stuck around there. And they had one place where you could look down this hallway and feel like you were looking down a football field inside a building, and it was just battery stacked. I mean, that would not be permitted today.
Right.
That would just not be permitted.
It wasn't safe, and it's like almost like a nuclear reaction.
Well, I felt for the fact that, I don't want to put it that way, but they believed they were safe with an incredible fire suppression system in the whole business, and in the event of a so-called thermal runaway, they were wrong.
So the sloughs there, Elkhorn Slough, which is a very important part of the Monterey Bay,
Yes.
of what we have in Monterey Bay, are we paying attention to that? Is it being cleaned
We are.
up? Is it being...
One of the people I met with this week was
Okay.
the aquarium. And they have the Research Institute. And one of the reasons they helped fund the scientist from Moss Landing was Elkhorn Slough, and making sure. And just for the record, I think when I was in the assembly about 15 or 20 years ago, I spent a day at Elkhorn Slough, and I was shocked to find out there's still large concentrations of DDT in Elkhorn Slough, and it's been banned since the 60s.
Where'd that come from?
It came from
Spraying.
the spraying
Oh, the
before it was
spraying?
banned.
Yeah.
And it just does it. It's one of those that has a half-life
A
of
long
forever.
time.
Yeah. And so it's still there. And I was just shocked because I consider it, I don't know if pristine is the right word. It's very bucolic, natural, and you feel like, and the Packards get a lot of credit because we're the native plant nursery is. That was proposed, I think, in the 60s for a big housing subdivision, and David Packard personally bought it to save it. And I think they're finally getting to the point that they'll do a conservation easement on it, and then it'll protect that side. And Mark Silverstein's been doing a great job forever at the Elkhorn Slough Foundation, and he's acquiring the different land. And there's still that dairy and some stuff that's over just above, on the slough, just above where the fire was. And actually I helped Glenn Church, who's the supervisor. I got $1 million in the budget for a pilot case for eucalyptus eradication. And one of the places has been around Elkhorn Slough. Because you have to watch out, because if it's within a certain thing from the ocean, it's monarch butterflies. And so
Right,
you have to get
exactly.
far enough away that it's not monarch butterflies.
The water in Elkhorn affected?
It seems to be passing the tests with that EP. The one thing is if you look at the tests, particularly the CSU guy that's done, and I'm looking forward, he hasn't published yet, and he hasn't published his peer review, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. But the one place of all the sites he measured that was toxic was the land that's just outside the fire, between the fire and Elkhorn Slough, just east of the bridge. It's the Vieira property. And so that's the one place.
Was that drainage going through there or something? What was it?
No, it was, I'm
Came out of the
guessing,
sky?
I'm guessing it was
soot.
aerial, but I don't,
Yeah.
but the tests show that that's the one place it exceeded standards.
You sound like an expert now. Did you?
I learn new things every day. I don't want to represent myself as
Well,
an
but my
expert.
point being is like, you didn't expect this. Did
No.
you see this coming?
No.
Right. This has been thrown into your lap. It's in your constituents' backyard, and you're our leader, and you've been sort of forced to take control of it and try to make it right for the
Well,
people who are
one
watching.
of the things, apropos that, and God help me if I had control over this. The one thing is I was concerned in the weeks after that the state agencies were not coordinating in a clear way. That was making me nervous, and right at the beginning, I was nervous that the tests weren't being done consistently with and now I feel like they've got a hold of that where they're modeling the plume, it's there. And my concern in talking to them and Zooming regularly is they're waiting in some cases to see something that causes a precipitous change to do some tests additionally in some places, and this rain might be that.
Right.
And if there are flare-ups, it might be that. I don't think the public likes that. They want to know that there's testing all the time, regularly, and this is still happening. And I think that's where, when people said we're never hearing from you, I mean, I was posting some things, but the thing is I'm trying to represent them in those discussions. Here, public is not feeling confident. So if you're ever not going to test in the, where this is, that's not going to engender the confidence there. And I think the one conversation I've been missing the last week or two is with the county. I want to sort of circle back with them and say, okay, they're giving you all this stuff. Are you putting it up when they're giving you? Are you getting the right context? Because I did intervene with the department to give the county context when the numbers came out that didn't have context to try to see.
Has there been any fault yet on this?
No, they have, what do they call them? They have this euphemism, and they're all doing it. It's a certain kind of investigation. Maybe it's forensic or something. And it's interesting because when I was Secretary of Natural Resources, CAL FIRE had this unit that whenever one of these big fires went off, that unit would go off and say, okay, who caused the Paradise
Yeah,
Fire?
this started here. at
Yeah,
this spot.
and the thing is, they were walled off from us. So I was not allowed to get an update, not allowed to feed, and I would just get this heads up. It might be announced tomorrow, and they're going to meet with you tomorrow morning, and then I would find out. That is what's happening here. Because when I talk to the Public Utilities Commission, they're doing the lead investigation, and it is just walled off from the rest of the staff, and they're going to be just like I was when I was secretary.
Protecting, the
Integrity of it.
right, and maybe
Is there a long-term plan to fix this problem, or is it people just testing and kicking the can down the road?
Fix what problem?
This problem in Moss Landing,
You mean?
and cleaning it up.
or
Oh, no.
regulate it.
Or
Yeah,
reg-
that's the thing. There is a plan,
And it,
and they are marching down the path. And
quickly, I hope. Quickly?
yes, but there's-
Expedited?
But yes, but let me
Fast
talk
track.
about that. Well, wait a second. Let's talk about that, because there are all these issues about that conflict with safety.
Okay.
Because some of those batteries were still holding a charge that was 30%.
Yeah.
And some of the rules say you can't go in and do these things with the batteries until they're at 0%. And it's like, that would take an extra year. And it's like, that's stupid. But at the same time, there is a safety issue, and I think the Public Utilities Commission, somebody reported to me, they have a process of delinking the batteries. So first you have to delink them from the grid and the whole business. I think they're at something like 80 to 85% are delinked. And so they have a plan, they're following it, they're marching down. The question is do they do what we're doing right here? Do they say, this is the stage, this is what we found, it's going to happen here, it's not as quick as we wanted, or it's quicker than we wanted. It's that kind of reporting that people want to know.
Who's paying for that cleanup? Is that
Well,
is there-
eventually it'll be Vistra.
Yeah.
I assume.
Right?
Yeah, but you see, we used to have, for example, I was involved in the process for oil cleanups in a past life, legislatively and otherwise. And originally it was the oil companies paid right away for half, and then you find out how much it is, they settle up, and you didn't want the public to have to advance anything for that second half. So some of us did a bill that sort of allowed for the oil companies be on the hook all the way along and not have the public have to do it. And I mean, a similar thing has got to be in play.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, it's insult to injury if
And
our
you-
taxpayers
Oh,
are on the hook for it,
totally.
you know?
We should not in any way. And somebody said to me flippantly about the one ranch there that's testing. They said, "Well, Mister probably bought that ranch." You know, and I think that is there's probably some truth. And and I sort of did this op-ed about 6 weeks ago, and one of the things I said was let's just go through every energy thing. Wind has had problems with birds. Solar has had the problem with the birds and the other stuff, and Moss Landing burnt a number of days, I think in 2003, when it was a fossil fuel plant. There was a fire. We've had Chernobyl. I would like to think with some of these there have been improvements. If you live around Chernobyl, you do not believe this. You know, and it's there was this presentation at one of the public meetings in San Luis Obispo recently where the guy, the evacuation plans for Diablo Canyon are in the front of the phone book, they're in calendars, they're everything, just reminding everybody that that's still there. And so the real question is the way it ended in your last show. Are there ways that this is in fact safe? And the second half that wasn't said is, are there ways that the public believes it? You
Sure.
know.
And what I mean, listen, you have a tanker anchored offshore that's pumping fuel to a power plant on the beach. I don't think that's safe.
Well,
you
no,
know?
it's funny. When I was driving down here, because I came directly from Sacramento, this former colleague who's from Santa Barbara called, and she was with my current colleague, and Julia, Louis Dreyfus, and Jane Fonda today, because they're going to reopen that pipeline that broke in 2015 along the coast that transmitted oil. That was outside.
Santa Barbara.
Yeah. And they think this is outrageous. And it's like, so there's still all these fossil fuel issues going around. And there was some quiet suggestion, oh, maybe we should go back to fossil fuels. And it's like, not only is that bad for the climate, that is categorically
Is
more
that the federal
dangerous.
government mentioning that?
Well, the current one is really overt. And I think we're going to have to work to fight offshore oil drilling in the next 4 years because they're going to try to bring that back. You look really happy.
Can we, by the way, can we stay up on this with you?
Absolutely.
And as we move
because
forward.
clearly, you can tell from this is changing all the time.
It is.
See, that thing is spinning. How many people are commenting on the
No,
show,
I'm
right?
sure it's a really important
I
thing.
just want to say, you and I are not scientists,
No.
right?
Yeah.
We invited people down here. That would be Toby Corey, Maddie, Adam Zeski, and Justin Cummings, and
I'm not a scientist either, but I'm doing my
Senator
best
John
to
Laird.
stay on
Everyone
top
I
of
called,
this.
they said they came right down here to give their piece, their information. So if you want to keep writing, just write to me, and I'll.
Well,
forward it on
we're putting up a button on my Senate website to try to post everything we get, but now that Monterey's posting some of the information directly, they're the logical place to go for the test results.
I want to say thank you to you.
12 years, yeah.
12 years of the show.
Oh, the show hasn't been that long.
Yeah. Well, and John, I just want to say, I mean, you know better than anybody, is that our coast between here and, say, San Luis Obispo, Morro Bay, we're more in tune with our environment than most communities. And that's why people are so concerned, is that we've been raised to have awareness for our environment and for safety of our community. And so it takes, luckily you are on board. And you're fighting for the people who are watching, and we'll get you back with updates.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that it's funny because there was this time, I might have been in the assembly where the League of Cities State Board was meeting up at Chaminade here. And I raced out of Sacramento to come down, and there's this guy that used to be in the legislature. He later went to Congress. He was on the LA City Council. And he says, "You live here?" He was looking at me and says, "Where do you live from here?" He says, "Now I see why you're for the environment." You know?
See?
And
Yeah.
he sort of, I said, "Yeah, this is something we need to protect." And let me just say one last thing before we sign off. I get just the horribleness of what this has been for that people in West Landing. The businesses that have paused or closed. You know, I was pitching at the time for people going back and just staying overnight or buying something or having a meal. This has just been really hard, and I think in the end they'll get some settlement, but the question is right, what do they do in the meantime? And that first $750, and some people didn't want to take it. I went down to Castroville and talked to people that were in the line, and there was one interesting thing. I would say when I went to there, 80%, 90% were Latino. That's not who I've been hearing from. So that was fascinating to see that was true. And there were people that didn't want to take it. No, this is going to waive my rights. And it was like, I talked to them, others did. They were very explicit. This does not waive any rights. You just need $750 right out the gate in cash in your pocket for the dislocation that you've had. And of course that's not enough.
And do you know how many people took that? Of the
I don't know. I saw it was that one was open for 5 hours right there, and I saw maybe 100 people. But I have no idea.
Hey, that makes a big difference.
So dedicate the show to John Bostic,
Yeah.
who went to school with Senator John Laird.
John went to school with Don Bostic. That's
Thanks
really
for coming on the show tonight. Really appreciate your time.
Yep.
TC, thank
Yeah,
you so much
Neil,
for.
that's great.
I'll see you next
So I
time.
take away from the grandkids.
Yeah, no, it's all great. John, thanks for coming on. Thanks for having the backs of the people here in the Monterey Bay. This is an important topic. Neil, we'll come back and talk about it more.
Yep.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Off the Lip radio show.